it's me, Kelly. Welcome back to another YouTube video. Today we are going to be doing my March wrap-up. This is the video where I get to talk about all the books I read in the previous month, whether I finished my TBR, whether I loved all the books, whether I hated all the books, or vice versa, loving some, hating some, you know the deal. So let's get into it. So I placed 6 books on my TBR, and surprisingly I read all 6 books on my TBR. Round of applause. Typically I feel like I don't get to all the books, or I'm not like stoked with all the choices I have, but I did finish all of them, which is surprising. The books on my TBR ranged from fantasy to thriller to romance to general fiction. I had 3 general fiction, 1 fantasy, 1 thriller, and 1 romance. A few books could be romance because they have it as a subplot, but I counted them as general fiction. For star ratings, we did find 1 5-star, and my lowest star rating was a 2, so that is the range, 2 to 5 stars. Let's just get into each individual book and talk about the rating and my thoughts. Alright, I will start off with the first book I finished in the month of March, not the first book I started, is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. Now this was my first 5-star of the year. I absolutely love Fredrik Backman's writing. It's just so clear and crisp, and yet so like thought-provoking in that case. I feel like that's a good word to use. So if you don't know what Anxious People is about, I'll read the back. It says, looking at real estate isn't usually a life or death situation, but an apartment open house becomes just that when a failed bank robber bursts in and takes a group of 8 strangers hostage. Each of them carries a lifetime of grievances, hurts, secrets, and passions that are ready to boil over. None of them is entirely who they appear to be. In short, they are the worst group of hostages in the world. But as minutes tick by, they begin to suspect that the criminal mastermind holding them hostage might be more in need of rescuing than they are. As the authorities and media surround the premises, these reluctant allies will reveal surprising truths about themselves and set in motion a chain of events so unexpected that even they can hardly explain what happens next. So, it's all having to do with a failed bank robbery, basically. And it's so interesting how Fredrik Backman creates these really creative characters in his book. Like, each person, I could, like, feel like they're real. Kind of a little quirky in some cases, some of them. But it's like, I love the characters. They are all different in their own way. But in the end, it's your anxieties and fears that probably are your commonalities between each other. So I love this quote from US Today on the top. It says, I hugged this book tightly with a smile on my face and tears in my eyes, because that's literally how I felt when I finished this book. I don't know what Fredrik Backman does in all his books, because that's how I feel when I finish them. The only other book I finished by him was a man called Uva. I always forget how to pronounce it, but that's the only other book I read by him, and I can't wait to read more. I know he's coming out with a new book, My Friends, this summer, I believe, and I also want to read Beartown by him. So he's a fabulous author. It's really easy to read his stories, and I love his writing style. It's really, really great. So this was my first 5-star of the read. I love it. I would highly recommend. It's also a like TV series on Netflix, or like a short TV series, like maybe 4 episodes or something, of Anxious People, which I did not know, so I would love to watch that. The next book I read, which I kind of was on a fiction kick, was The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. This I rated a 4-star. Like I said, I kind of was on like a general fiction kick with Fredrik Backman, then going into this story. And this story is about A.J. Fikry, who is the owner of a bookstore. He lives alone. His bookstore is experiencing the worst sales in history, and now his prized possession, a rare collection of Edgar Allan Poe poems, has been stolen. But when a mysterious package appears at the bookstore, its unexpected arrival gives Fikry the chance to make his life over and see everything anew. So that, it's such a cute story about this man who owns a bookstore, and how this little package that shows up at his bookstore kind of changes his whole life and his perspective of life, and it changes him for the better. This was another like easy read for me, or like just clear and concise with their writing. I never read a Gabrielle Zevin book. I do want to read Tomorrow. I believe that is also by her. And like I said, this was like a movie in my mind, which surprisingly, this is a movie. Literally, I believe it's on Netflix as well. So if you would love to watch the movie, I need to. I haven't yet, but I like to compare the book to the movie. So there is more than just like general fiction. There's a little bit of romance, there's a little bit of mystery, but overall it was such like a good story because it had all those elements. It wasn't just focused on one thing. There was like his poems getting stolen, so you're trying to think like, why would this happen? This package showing up, why would this package show up? Or the romance that started to bloom between AJ Fikry and another character. So very cute. It was just so cute. I loved this book. So 4 stars, The Storied Life of AJ Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. Okay, my next book brought me to tears by the end. I didn't know how I felt while reading it, but once I got to the end, I just hit with emotions, and that is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. I rated this a 4.25 stars. This story is about Dani Conan. She lives by numbers. She's nothing like her lifelong best friend, the wild, whimsical, believes in fate, Bella. Dani's meticulous planning seems to have paid off after she nails the most important job interview of her career and accepts her boyfriend's marriage proposal in one fell swoop, falling asleep completely content. But when she's awakened, she's suddenly in a different apartment with a different ring on her finger and beside a very different man. Dani spends exactly 1 hour, 5 years in the future before she wakes again in her own home on the brink of midnight, and it is 1 hour she cannot shake. And it says, in 5 years, and it's unforgettable love story. I don't think this was mostly romance. I feel like they did the marketing of this as a romance book. They shouldn't have. I feel like romance is a subplot in this story. I feel like it was more general fiction. So keep that in your mind as I talk a little bit more. But like the summary said, Dani wakes up. She is in a different apartment. It's 5 years in the future. This takes place in 2020, and then the future is 2025, which is kind of crazy. I'm reading this in 2025. Kind of was like, whoa, weird. But she wakes up and she's with a different guy in a different apartment, and she's like, what is going on? And she sees the date and it's 5 years into the future. So she's like, can I see the future? So she tries everything in her power to not have that happen, because she's like, why am I with this guy and not the guy I'm currently with? So she kind of tries to change the future by making different choices or doing different things and seeing if that will change the outcome of that vision she sees in the beginning of this book. So I definitely was in the middle of it, kind of like, this is okay. I'm very intrigued to see what happens or if there's more magical elements. But by the end, I did have tears in my eyes, because it has a lot to do with your best friend, and just like putting myself into Dani's shoes of what happens at the end of this book, because I don't want to give spoilers. I definitely brought tears in my eyes because I didn't want to think about that. So definitely like a really great story, and I want to read more by Rebecca Searle. I know she has a book called Expiration Dates, where it's like this girl is handed a piece of paper every time like her boyfriend is like when they're gonna break up, like an expiration date of when the relationship will end. So I like the magical aspect that Rebecca adds to her books. So I definitely want to read more from this author, and I loved, and it also was very short read, so it was very quick to read. And like I said, not really romance, more of a subplot, more general fiction, but it's definitely a great book. Okay. Now, I remember this next book for my TBR. I was hyping it up. I was so excited to read because I was like, wow, this sounds like a great book. And I started reading it right away at the beginning of the month. But then I like soft DNF'd it because I was just like so bored out of my mind. And that is Serafina by Rachel Hartman. I was bored, I was confused, I don't know what was going on. Reading the synopsis, I was so intrigued. I'm like, oh, this girl is half dragon, there's a mystery, they're trying to figure out who killed or who brutally murdered someone in the royal family. So, and then there's also like a blooming romance going on. I had no idea what was going on in this book. Like, I soft DNF'd it because maybe I was like, maybe my brain's not working. Let me put it down, read something else. Let me get the audiobook. Let me listen. Still didn't understand where the plot was. All I know was Serafina played music. She was musically talented, and she's half dragon. Did I understand anything else that was going on? No. So this is my 2-star rating because like the concept of it I thought was really, really good. The execution was just not great. And I don't know if it's because I'm dumb. I was gonna say dumb, or if this was just not a book for me personally, because I saw so many 5-star ratings for this book, and it's a YA series. Like, so thinking if I was like 13, 14 reading this, I don't think I would understand it then. So, I don't know. This book was just very confusing. I didn't know where the plot was going most of the time, and I just didn't understand it. But maybe give it a chance. Definitely not my fave. Probably will stop talking about this book. I'm so sorry I hyped it up because it sounded really interesting. And I think that's why I rated it so low, is because I was so anticipating a really high rating, and it was just a disappointment for me. So that's Serafina by Rachel Hartman. This was a YA fantasy series. This is the first book. Will not be continuing the series. The next one is my thriller, and that is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This is my first Lisa Jewell book, and I was so excited to get into this because I feel like I needed something to get me out of the weird Serafina, like, oh, this book doesn't make any sense funk. So I picked up this, and this is about a girl who disappears, okay? Disappearance. It says, Ellie Mack was the perfect daughter. She was 15, the youngest of 3. She was days away from the I don't know what this word. Idyllic? I'm gonna say idyllic post-exams summer vacation with her whole life ahead, but then she was gone. Now her mother, Laurel Mack, is trying to put her life back together. It's been 10 years since her daughter disappeared, 7 years since her marriage ended, and only months since the last clue in Ellie's case was unearthed. So when she first meets an unexpectedly charming man in a cafe, no one is more surprised than Laurel at how quickly their flirtation develops into something deeper. But she knows that she's meeting Floyd's daughter, and his youngest, Poppy, takes Laurel's breath away because looking at Poppy is like looking at Ellie. And now the unanswered questions she's tried so hard to put to rest begin haunting Laurel anew. Where did Ellie go? Did she run away from home as the police have long suspected? Or was there something more sinister happening? Who is Floyd, and why does this daughter remind Laurel so vividly of her own missing girl? Like I said, disappearance of a daughter. I rated this a 4.25 because I loved just like the anticipation of like reading and like not wanting to stop, because I was like, I need to know more. Like, who is this Floyd guy, and like what's going on? Like, I just felt like every page I wanted to turn to figure out, which that I feel like is a good thriller when it keeps you on your toes or keeps you guessing. I will say I did guess the plot, like one of the big plot points, like right away in the beginning, but it didn't make me want to stop reading. It just made me want to continue to confirm my suspicions. And when I finished this book, I did feel a little like creeped out. I was just kind of like, okay, But I think this is my first Lisa Jewell book. I think she did a great job giving me that creeped out feeling through her writing after reading this story. So I definitely want to read more by her. I think she's a fabulous thriller author based off of this one book, so I do want to read more. Yeah, there was just a lot of creepy little things that happened in this book that not scary, but just like where you're just like, ugh, like kind of cringed out, or not cringed, I shouldn't say cringe, creeped out, more creeped out in a case. Or after finishing, I kind of just sat there and was like, what just happened? So if you're looking for something like that, Then She Was Gone would probably be a great one. And yeah, 4.25, pretty high rating, so there we go. And the last and final book that I read in the month of March is Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is such a cutesy little small town romance, and I love Abby Jimenez's writing. I love that she connects Minnesota to it. If you do not know, that is where I live. I live in Minnesota. So when she talks about little areas in Minnesota or cities, she even like mentioned Winona. If you don't know, that's where I went to school. I have vlogs and stuff before I did BookTube of my dorms and stuff like that. So she mentions that in this book, and I'm like, I know where that is. So it's really fun to make that connection, because I'm like, I feel like this is real. Like this could be real because you're talking about real places. But let's talk about the summary. After a wild bet, gourmet grilled cheese sandwich, and a cuddle with a baby goat, Alexis Montgomery has had her world turned upside down. The cause, Daniel Grant, a ridiculously hot carpenter who's 10 years younger than her, and as casual as they come, the complete opposite of sophisticated city girl Alexis. And yet their chemistry is undeniable. While her ultra-wealthy parents want her to carry on the family legacy of world-renowned surgeons, Alexis doesn't need glory or fame. She's fine with being a mere ER doctor. In every minute she spends with Daniel in the tight-knit town where he lives, she's discovering just what's really important. Yet letting the relationship become anything more than a short-term fling would mean turning her back on her family and giving up on the opportunity to help thousands of people. Bringing Daniel into the world is impossible, and yet she can't just give up the joy she's found with him either. With so many differences between them, how can Alexis possibly choose between her world or his? So I definitely loved it. I love the beginning of this book, how we get right into how they meet, and it's just such a silly and crazy way of how they meet. And I can't wait to read Yours Truly. I know that is a lot of people's like favorites of Abby Jimenez. So I rated this a 4-star. I don't know if I already said that, but rated it a 4-star. Cutesy little romance, small town vibes. Opposites attract, I guess, because she's very like sophisticated. He's like small town carpenter, worker man, I don't know. Loved it. Their chemistry was just so cute, and there were some points where I kind of was like, ooh, like her friends, they kind of irritated me, but I think that was the point, because they're kind of very toxic and fake, and we all have those types of people who you think are your friends but really aren't. So it just definitely brought in a more realistic aspect of this romance story. And I will say, compared to Just for the Summer, which was the first Abby Jimenez book I read, this didn't have that many emotional, like heartbreaking, tear my heart out topics into it. It does talk a little bit, as a like trigger warning, has a story of domestic violence, so that is heartbreaking in a case. But if we're thinking of Just for the Summer, where I like bawled my eyes out, this, yeah, different vibes. So I'm excited to get into Yours Truly. That is on my April TBR. And then Say You'll Remember Me is out. I've read that as well. I forgot I've read that as well. I always forget I read that because I received an advanced reader copy like October, November of last year. So it's like, now that it's finally out, I'm like, oh yeah, I read that book. So yeah, 4 stars, loved it. Can't wait to get into yours truly and kind of stick with this little mini series that she has. So okay, and those are all 6 books that I read in the month of March. I hope that me talking about my thoughts and feelings, maybe you got some recommendations or you got some insight on some books if you are thinking about reading them. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and also make sure you subscribe. I post videos once a week, whether it's book related content like this or lifestyle videos or vlogs, kind of whatever I'm in the mood for. So if you like what you see, you should totally subscribe. That is about it. Thanks for watching. Bye!